Unlock your potential with a comprehensive suite of investing tools and expert education with GammaEdge. Start your free 14-day trial today. When delta is negative at a strike, not counting what expiries are turned on to show that, but when delta is negative at a strike, moneyness matters. So, and this is really, really, really important. Like, really, this is your first, how do I look at this? So, for instance, if we are above spot price and we see a negative value, what that means, those are where the in-the-money puts reside. And if you see a negative delta above us, which is where moneyness is in the money for puts, long puts, on our side of the table, everything we do here, unless we make an explicit reference, is always from the perspective of the trader, not the dealer. So in that condition, it shows the absence of out-of-the-money calls at that strike, which means the in-the-money puts are dominating that strike. That's all it means. Doesn't have any inference, puts being bought or calls being sold or anything like that. It's just a status. It's literally a snapshot in time of the condition of the strike. And don't read anything more into it, except when we start broadening our spectrum up and down and we look at a group of strikes. When you look at a group of strikes above spot, if they're all red, that means they're all put dominated on, long put dominated on, because this is the in the money puts, and there's an absence of out of the money call speculation. This is what makes our analysis unique. We don't know of any other group that ties it together where moneyness matters like this. And why this is important is there really are four conditions that we've kind of bucketed in terms of above and below spot price, calls and puts. Above and below, calls, puts, in the money, out of the money. You can see how that would arise in different conditions depending on where we are in the market cycle. And so, Prana, I understand your question, but I don't want you to believe or infer that because a strike is negative or a strike is positive that there's action associated with it. There isn't. It's a state, it's a snapshot. You've literally pulled out your camera and you've taken a snapshot in time of what is dominant at that strike. Now, this is where VOLD can play a role for you, because the VOLD on, say, for instance, an out-of-the-money call side will negate, because that's out of the money, it's above us. If you have a red in-the-money put above us, you could see targeting at a strike above us on the call side, which through the day will do exactly what we're talking about, where it will start pounding that negative delta into a positive value. You have to rely on VOLD because Opera does not update open interest through the day. So we have a combination of using the VOLD command and watching the targeting and also watching kind of the base where we start the day with the OI structure, because they both play into that. So that's the first thing. So let's separate, in your question, let's separate status versus action, okay? And I know you're asking about retail and dealer and all that. VOLD implies there's going to be a response. If we see in magnitude more calls going in above spot price and we see price moving up, it's a better than coin toss conclusion that the dealer is getting shorter because they are on the opposite side of these calls going in. When we open a long call, our book gets longer, the dealer's book gets shorter. For all things considered, the dealer, because they're becoming shorter, will have to buy, and that pushes price upward. That's a very simplistic, but we see it happen over and over and over. So when you watch VOLD and you see out of the money call volume, you have and price moving up, you can draw a very good conclusion that we're seeing calls go in. Yesterday is a clear example of this. We saw it all day long. And we saw more calls, out of the money calls, throughout the day. And we saw the mass of VOLD moving up, the centroid of the calls moving up in price as more and more calls out of the money were added to the structure. Doesn't mean we didn't see puts also moving, and we did yesterday, but the magnitude of the puts below us was much smaller than the magnitude of the calls above us, which gave rise to what we were looking at yesterday, or at least we believe in part what we were looking at. So yesterday was where the data was just lockstep with pricing and what we were seeing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, you're asking about, when we see a negative delta, negative gamma, or whatever the case may be, you're asking how is the dealer positioned. It's not on a strike by strike basis, and I would say to a large extent it's not even on an index basis. It's on their book basis, and their book is whatever they transact. And I know this isn't the answer you want to hear, but it's the best representation of how it works. It's all about risk. And if they can't make a market in the SPX at that particular time, they may make a market in the constituent stocks of the SPX. And so you might not actually see the SPX doing what exactly you think it is, but you might see the underlines moving a huge amount. And I think in part, we saw a lot of that short covering yesterday, as many of some of these stocks transitioned in their deltas, transitioned to a positive state. Dan's work this morning, for instance, I don't know if everybody's had a chance to go up and take a look at the market structure heat map, but it shows very clearly that we've transitioned in a number of stocks to an out-of-the-money call dominance and in-the-money call dominance. And I would urge everybody to realize that that's where the dealer positioning is going to come in. It's in the aggregate, not in the individual strikes. Now, these individual strikes offer areas of respite where you have low exposure gamma. We call that a gamma node. Where you have low exposure delta, we call that a delta node. And we see parking in those areas. And what I mean by that is that overnight, if I were a dealer, where could I go where my delta and gamma risk is minimized? And it's typically where we see sign changes in the delta structure as well as the gamma structure. And so when you see, like CheckNav yesterday called it brilliantly about where we were going to park, and the way he did that is exactly the way we teach, in that you're looking for these nodes and they would offer, some respite from having huge exposure. Doesn't always work that way. I want to be very clear to everyone. It works more often than not, but we've seen some just stupid exposure overnight. No reason why they would pick that spot, and we chalk that up as we're still learning. But the other part of it is we often see, and for an iron fly construct, for a pinning overnight construct, sometimes these parking zones can be extremely lucrative and can offer a way for us to see where we're going. What the dealer is doing, remember, they're hedging throughout the day, so we think they just go from hedge location to hedge location to hedge location, trying to drive the market in a way that they can reduce their overnight exposure to a certain nodal level.